Hey there, students. Kate Lawson here, just checking in with you this week. I wanted to thank you for all of your introductions. It was so nice to get a sense of where you guys are coming from. Lots of people from West Covina. That was interesting, having grown up there or lived there for many, many years. So, anyways, I wanted to go over your first module with you. Sometimes I think students feel a little uneasy about this one because it's like the first time I'm asking you to do something, and you're like, oh, I've only read a chapter. So, the first thing I want you to do is make sure you read chapter one. If you try to do the assignments or the quizzes, it's not set up like that. So, make sure you're reading the chapter because sometimes I wonder when students are having a hard time if they've actually done that. And if they have done that, then um, I feel like you should have a good sense. But if you don't, feel free to reach out to me. So, what you're going to be doing for this first assignment is you're going to be choosing a crime of your choice. And you're going to be analyzing it from the sociological lens, right? So, what does it mean to analyze something? It means we're kind of peeling back the layers, we're looking at things critically, we're really trying to come up with some kind of rationale as to why this crime happened. And you can consider all different types, right? And we're going to be going through all of these types throughout our course, but I want you to just start playing with it right now. So, for instance, just to give you an idea of what you might look at, so we've seen a lot of social unrest recently, right? And it's been a really challenging time for the US in a lot of ways. And I think at this point in our history, a lot of stuff is coming to accumulation that's really been people have been struggling with underneath, right? And these are things like institutional racism, which is racism that's been like set up in our system, right? Where if you look at, for instance, like education and African Americans, they don't receive the same type of funding. Their schools don't perform as well. And you see these layers at every kind of in every institution. And I'd be happy to provide you with that research as well if you're interested in learning more. And so it shouldn't be surprising to you that you see a lot of this in the criminal justice system as well. And so understanding today's um, it's interesting. You can call it a protest or you can call it a riot, and that's really important because language is really important. A protest has sense, right? A riot does not. A riot is senseless. It's destructive, right? An uprising has organization and it has uh, that's something that they're trying to change. And I think that's what's really important here. As we come to look at what's happening in our country, we can say, well, the power of language, if we called it a riot or we called it a protest, but also who has that power to determine what's legitimate and not legitimate, right? Because in our culture, police, anything that they've done has always been considered legitimate. And what we're starting to see is that there are some really awful things that are happening to particular communities at much, much higher rates. And so, to understand the history, and you're going to learn more about this as well, but we have to understand the history of African Americans in our in our criminal justice system. Historically, blacks were, first of all, through most of our history, for about 250 years, they were slaves, right? And this was an economic system set up in white supremacy, right? And this was a system where black bodies were exploited, beaten, all of these awful, awful things, killed in some instances, where black families were systematically torn apart, right? And so to understand black bodies today, kind of in very similar situations, we have to look at the history of this, right? It was law enforcement's job at one time to wrangle up the slaves that had run away, and the law was on their side. And so now we can look at this a little bit more critically and go, okay, wait a minute. So do you see how we just looked at kind of the uprising today? We looked at the influence of power of who gets to define what is a protest and what is a riot. And generally, those are people in power, right? The little guy at the very, very bottom, he might see this as a legitimate resistance. What else am I supposed to do? But it's the people in power who get to call it, who get to say, nope, what you're doing is not that, or what you're doing is looting, or what you're doing is this, right? And that would be looking at this more from a conflict view, right? Where It's the people in power who want to maintain their power and influence. We might look at things like political and economic factors. And so you definitely see this, the tie with politics and mass incarceration. We know that politicians have used mass incarceration or criminal justice overall to push for tough on crime punishments and things like that. And so we also see the economic factors as well, right? For profit prisons make a lot of people money. And so these are ways that we come to analyze things sociologically. So for this assignment, I don't expect you to be perfect. I want to be really, really clear that this is all kind of a practice run. But what I don't want to see, and sometimes I do see this, is students just kind of summarizing what a crime was. That will definitely kind of get some points knocked off because I want to see that you're going to start playing around with this. And again, if you're not sure how to look at a protest sociologically, Google it, right? Get a sense of, how we come to learn about this stuff. I want you to tie what we're seeing to broader social forces and ideas. So, for instance, if we looked at something like spree shooting, we're seeing that most of them are male, right? So what's going on? Because sometimes we always go with spree shootings or these mass shootings, right? We go, oh, it's mental health. Well, women have just as many mental health issues as men, but we don't do this kind of stuff. So there's something else deeper going on other than mental health. But oftentimes it's the accumulation of all of these kind of multi-layered things happening, right? So that's what I want you to kind of play with here and dig deep, right? What are these social forces when it comes to things like theft? Think about capitalism. Why do people steal, especially when they have money, right? It's this idea of greed, right? But we could also look at this from the other side of the spectrum of poverty, right? When people are living in poverty, when their basic needs are not being met, they might resort to crime as a way to gain, like, even some kind of legitimate role, status, money, whatever, right? Basic needs that they need for their families and things. So I hope that helps clarify. So for this week, you're going to be finishing module 1. You're going to read chapter 1. You're going to listen to the chapter 1 audio lecture. You're going to listen to the quiz, sorry. I haven't been in class for a long time. Take the quiz, and then you're going to submit this. If, as you're working on this throughout the week, please reach out to me if you want to dialogue back and forth. If you have some ideas, I'd be happy to do that with you. Just send me a quick email, and usually I can, as long as it's early enough in the day, I can set a Zoom session up for that day most of the time. If it's like 4 or 5 o'clock, I might need to set it up because I'm making dinner and taking care of my kid. By the way, school starts for her this week. So this is where my double homeschooling and teaching online is coming in. So I'm there with you guys who are probably have a little bit more extra going on in your lives than you normally would. I'm right there with you, but we're going to get through this together. And you guys are fantastic. I'm so excited and honored to be your instructor this course. So again, reach out with any questions, concerns, or anything else. And, good luck on this first assignment. I'm here for you if you need me. Take care.